There is a distinct, undeniable moment that happens at the end of a toxic cycle. And if you have actually lived through it, you already know exactly what it feels like. It doesn't arrive with a loud announcement, a massive blowout fight, or some big dramatic confrontation where everyone finally states their case. It is infinitely quieter than that. It is a specific, heavy kind of stillness that creeps into your life on a completely random day when you least expect it. You could just be going about your normal, everyday routine. Maybe you're standing at the counter waiting for your coffee to brew, or maybe you're just sitting in your car in the parking lot for 10 minutes before walking into work. And suddenly, out of nowhere, you notice that something fundamental has shifted deep inside your chest. That constant, exhausting, low-humming anxiety, the exact nervous energy you have been carrying around like a heavy second skin for months, or maybe even years, is just quieter. It is not completely gone, but the volume has been turned all the way down. And that is when the reality of what is happening finally hits you. That quietness is the exact moment you realize you have completely stopped reacting the way you used to. You don't feel that desperate, frantic urge to fix things anymore. And you finally stop trying to explain your perspective to someone who never wanted to understand it anyway. You stop overthinking every single word that comes out of your mouth, and you completely stop apologizing just for existing or taking up space in the room. Somewhere inside that brand new, hard-won silence, you finally stumble upon a single, solid piece of ground that belongs entirely to you, and no one else can touch it. But here is the terrifying psychological truth you need to understand. The narcissist always notices this internal shift before you even fully realize it yourself. Their entire nervous system is highly synchronized and wired to do one specific thing, and that is to track your emotional energy. They do not care about your genuine happiness, and they never did, but they are pathologically obsessed with your attention. Your hyper-focus on their changing moods, your endless walking on eggshells, and your desperate, exhausting need to patch things up after every argument is the literal air they breathe. It is their lifeblood. When you finally pull that emotional fuel away from them, not by screaming, shouting, or engaging in another dramatic fight, but through a cold, quiet, internal withdrawal, they feel the sudden drop in pressure immediately. To them, it feels exactly like the air getting sucked completely out of a room right before a massive tornado hits. If your chest tightens even a little bit hearing this, it is because your body remembers that exact shift. You have seen that sudden, frantic panic start to flicker behind their eyes when they realize they can no longer pull your strings. And you are here because you need to know what happens next. You need to prepare yourself for the absolute last, dirtiest psychological trick they will pull the very second they realize they are losing total control over you. Imagine what happens when you finally decide to completely stop doing the relationship dance. For months or maybe even years, you have been hypervigilant, tracking their exact location in the house just by listening to the heavy sound of their footsteps on the floor. You have spent countless nights lying wide awake at 3 a.m., frantically rehearsing imaginary conversations in your head, desperately trying to find the perfect combination of words that would finally make them understand how much they are hurting you. But then, a day comes where you just stop. You don't make a big announcement, you just drop the rope. Suddenly, they walk into the room and start up their usual emotional routine. They drop that familiar passive-aggressive comment, or they let out that specific heavy sigh they always use to signal that you have disappointed them yet again. But this time, instead of your heart rate spiking, You feel absolutely nothing. There is no sudden rush of fear, no panic in your chest, and no desperate urge to scramble and fix it. Instead, you are hit with a flat, clear, almost boring realization. There they go again. You see the behavior for exactly what it is, devoid of any emotional power over you. In that exact moment, you instantly become the most dangerous thing in their entire world, because you have become completely unpredictable. To a toxic person, your unpredictability is a literal existential threat, because their entire identity, their sense of power, and their day-to-day stability completely rely on your predictable reaction. They don't just want you to comply, they actively need you to cry, to scream, to over-explain yourself, or to desperately defend your character. They view your anger as a deep form of devotion because it proves they still sit firmly at the absolute center of your universe. When you replace that intense devotion with a quiet, detached curiosity, just watching them spiral the way you would watch a strange weather pattern, it terrifies them down to the bone. When a normal person panics because a relationship is ending, they fall apart emotionally, cry, or express genuine grief. But when a narcissist panics because they realize they are losing their grip on you, they do the exact opposite. They get incredibly calm, highly focused, and intensely calculating. They look at you and realize all of their old, reliable psychological tools are completely broken. The usual guilt trips are landing totally flat. The silent treatment they are trying to punish you with actually feels like a peaceful vacation to you. And your old emotional outbursts have completely turned into detached eye rolls. Realizing they have zero leverage left, they immediately discard the old playbook, switch their strategy entirely, and pull out their absolute nuclear option. This final dirty trick is so highly effective because it does not look like a trick, an attack, or a manipulation at all. In fact, it looks like an absolute miracle, resembling every single thing you ever begged, pleaded, and prayed for during your darkest nights in the relationship. The narcissist has been quietly studying you from a distance, absorbing your brand new vocabulary of boundaries, self-respect, and personal growth. Now they are getting ready to step onto the stage and perform the absolute role of a lifetime. They are going to show up at your door or in your inbox wearing a flawless mask of a completely transformed, deeply reflective human being. The cold harshness, the arrogance, and that familiar defensive sneer you know all too well are suddenly gone, completely replaced by an aura that is soft, vulnerable, and incredibly tender. They will look you dead in the eye with intense sincerity, capturing your gaze the exact way you always beg them to. And they will start speaking words that sound like they were lifted directly from a professional therapist's notebook. With a perfectly steady, humble voice, they will say things like, "I have been doing a massive amount of self-reflection lately, and I finally see it. You were completely right about everything, and I am so deeply sorry for how I treated you." It is the ultimate trap, perfectly designed to exploit your empathy and pull you right back into the cycle. The absolute second those words leave their mouth, you need to stop right there, lock your knees, and take a deep, grounding breath. You have to pause, because your entire biology, your nervous system, and your whole body are going to desperately want to believe what you are hearing. Every single lonely night you spent crying yourself to sleep on the bathroom floor, every agonizing text you drafted but never sent, and every secret fantasy you ever had of them finally waking up, realizing your worth, and choosing love is standing right in front of you in human form. It sounds exactly like real accountability, and it feels like the ultimate emotional redemption you have been starving for. But right here is the cold, hard, unshakable truth that will literally save your psychological life. This is not a transformation. This is a translation. They have not changed a single thing about who they actually are underneath the surface. They have simply learned how to fluently speak your language. They have been quietly studying you like an opponent, listening to the self-help podcasts you play in the background, reading the titles of the books you leave on the coffee table, and absorbing the exact therapeutic vocabulary you use to describe your deep pain. Now they are expertly feeding those exact words back to you. They aren't saying them because they actually understand your heartbreak or feel genuine remorse. They are saying them because they realize those words are the most sophisticated weapon they have ever used against you. This is professional-grade, high-level manipulation, and it is incredibly dangerous. This time around, they aren't trying to lure you back with cheap affection or material gifts. They are offering you the illusion of psychological growth, deliberately using your very own personal healing as the ultimate bait to snap the trap shut. To fully protect yourself, you have to peer beneath the mask and understand the raw reality of their internal terror. When a narcissist finally realizes that you are genuinely centered, that you aren't just faking it, posturing, or trying to make them jealous, but that you are actually emotionally stable without them, they do not just experience a normal sense of romantic rejection. They feel a terrifying sense of psychological dissolution, as if they are literally erasing from existence. You need to understand that you were never just a partner to them. You were a massive, load-bearing wall holding up the entire crumbling structure of their fragile self-esteem. Your daily anxiety proved to them that they were incredibly powerful, and your tears were the ultimate validation that they truly mattered. The very second you take that emotional supply away, you completely demolish their entire reality. That quiet, controlled, perfectly, deeply reflective performance they are putting on for you is not born out of love. It is fueled entirely by a deep, primal panic. If you can actually heal from the damage they caused, and if you can truly thrive completely without them, then the one terrifying truth they cannot afford to face becomes undeniably real. They are completely, totally ordinary. They are not a god, they are not a genius mastermind, and they aren't even a particularly impressive villain. They are just a hollow, deeply insecure person who threw away a genuinely good thing. That specific realization is so corrosive to their fragile ego that they will say or do absolutely anything to make you come back into the relationship, purely so they can prove to themselves that they still possess the ultimate power to push you away and break you down all over again. They will eagerly validate your deepest feelings, willingly admit to specific past abuses, use advanced psychological terms like trauma, and they might even be the first one to suggest going to couples therapy together. But you must remember that they are absolutely not doing this to repair the bond or build a healthy future with you. They are doing it solely to regain entry into your life. They don't want equality or boundaries because a healthy relationship offers them zero emotional fuel. They want unfettered access to your heart so they can slowly, gently, and lovingly start to dismantle your self-esteem all over again from the inside out. The absolute best way to spot the difference between a genuinely changed human being and a highly strategic narcissistic performance is to watch exactly what happens when you do not immediately fall back into their arms. A person who is experiencing real, authentic remorse will naturally hold space for your skepticism, your anger, and your doubt. They understand deep down that they broke the trust, and they accept that rebuilding it is a slow process earned in millimeters over months or even years. But a toxic performance is entirely different, because a performance always runs on a strict, hidden timer. You can test this theory yourself. The next time they approach you with this new, soft, deeply reflective version of themselves, look them dead in the eye and implement a simple, calm boundary. Tell them directly, "I appreciate what you are saying, and I hear you, but I need time. I need to see absolute consistency from you over many months before I can even think about reconciling. I cannot just jump back into this." The second those words leave your mouth, stop talking and watch their face intently. Watch the tiny micro-twitch at the corner of their mouth, or the sudden fleeting flash of irritation behind their eyes, because you are about to watch their beautiful mask completely crack in real time. You see, a narcissistic performance can only last as long as the payoff remains fast and easy. The exact millisecond you introduce a reasonable, mature boundary that delays their instant gratification, their manufactured softness will suddenly develop a hard, defensive spine. Their demeanor will shift instantly, and they will say to you with a heavy sigh of forced, impatient patience, "Look, I understand that you're hurt, but I just didn't realize you were still holding on to the past so tightly." Do you hear exactly what just happened in that sentence? It is incredibly subtle, but they just completely moved the target right off of themselves and placed it squarely back on you. In a single breath, the problem is no longer the horrific things they did to destroy the relationship. The entire problem has now become your inability to just get over it and let it go. They are actively trying to pathologize your healthy healing process. They are taking your incredible new boundaries and trying to repaint your strength as cold rigidity, unforgiving bitterness, or irrational fear. This is the classic dirty psychological inversion. First, they perfectly mirrored your therapeutic language to lure you back into their web. Then, the very moment they realized you weren't biting the bait, they completely flipped the script to convince you that your crystal clear clarity is actually a sign of emotional damage. If you are not absolutely grounded in your own reality, this specific tactic will throw you completely off balance. You will instantly start to spiral into self-doubt, wondering if maybe you actually are being way too harsh, or if they really are trying to change, and you are just the broken one who cannot accept genuine love. You need to understand with absolute certainty that this sudden wave of intense self-doubt is not your intuition speaking to you. It is nothing more than the deeply ingrained residue of years of psychological training. They have spent the entire duration of your relationship systematically training your nervous system to believe that your personal perception of reality is the actual problem. Every single time they made you question your own memory of an event, and every single time you expressed legitimate hurt, only to be told that you were just being way too sensitive, they were intentionally banking on this exact moment. They are desperately hoping that the old, comfortable, familiar feeling of self-doubt will completely override the brand new, fragile feeling of self-trust you have been working so hard to build. You need to understand a fundamental law of toxic psychology. A narcissist can easily survive your intense anger. They can thrive on your deep hatred, and they can even comfortably tolerate your cold silence. Why? Because every single one of those emotional responses still puts them right at the absolute center of your universe. If you are screaming at them, you are investing energy in them. If you hate them, they still dominate your thoughts. Even if you are giving them the silent treatment out of pure frustration, that silence is still an active, heavy reaction to something they did. But there is one thing a narcissist absolutely cannot survive, and that is your complete, unbothered indifference. They are utterly powerless against a person who has genuinely, wholeheartedly moved on with their life. When you finally reach that point where you wake up on a random day and suddenly realize you haven't thought about them, missed them, or checked up on them in an entire week, that is the literal end of the world for them. The moment you become truly indifferent, you stop acting as a mirror that reflects their inflated sense of self-importance. You look right through them as if they are nothing more than a passing stranger on the street. And a stranger has absolutely no obligation to give them validation, attention, or energy. That is exactly why they are putting on this elaborate, final performance using soft, therapeutic language. It is a frantic, desperate, last-minute Hail Mary attempt to stop you from slipping into that state of indifference. They would 1,000 times rather have you completely detest them and scream in their face than have you simply forget they exist. To a manipulator, your hatred is still a beautiful form of intimacy because it means you are still deeply tangled up in their web, actively burning your precious energy on them. The real ultimate victory over a toxic person is never going to look like a dramatic Hollywood movie scene where they suddenly break down in tears, fall to their knees, and finally admit that you were right all along. Real life does not work that way, and chasing that fantasy will only keep you trapped in their cycle forever. The genuine, sweet victory is actually something infinitely more peaceful. It is a quiet Sunday morning 6 months from now when you wake up, make yourself a cup of coffee, and suddenly realize you just spent the entire weekend completely absorbed in your own favorite hobbies, hanging out with your actual friends, and building a life you love, without their name crossing your mind even once. That quiet, beautiful irrelevance is the ultimate closure, and it requires absolutely nothing from them to be real. So when they inevitably show up on your doorstep or in your inbox with the absolute perfect scripted apology, you must realize that you do not need to fight them, argue with them, or send a massive multi-paragraph text message detailing every single way they ever broke your heart. You don't need to do any of that, because all of it, even a well-written paragraph defending yourself, is still considered active engagement. It is still premium emotional fuel that tells them they can still get a reaction out of you. The only move that actually works against a high-level manipulator is no move at all. You do absolutely nothing. You don't participate in the game anymore. Instead, you choose to simply stay firmly planted in your own life, your own body, and the safe, peaceful reality you have painstakingly built completely without them. You do not need to raise your voice, and you don't need to scream. You can look at their beautiful, desperate performance with total calm and simply say, "I am genuinely glad to hear that you are doing better, but I have completely moved on with my life." And the very second those words leave your mouth, you close the door on that chapter forever. But when you close that door, you must make absolutely sure that you do not close it with a massive, angry slam. A loud slam is dramatic, it shows emotional turbulence, and it gives them a whole new wave of chaotic energy to feed on. Instead, you close that door with a quiet, solid, definitive click. A click means there is no anger left, no lingering resentment, and no door left cracked open for future negotiations. A click means it is simply, beautifully, and permanently done. The major reason this final therapeutic trick works on so many incredibly smart, strong, and deeply healed people is never because those people are weak or foolish. It works because those people are naturally full of genuine hope. It is never a character flaw to want to believe that someone you deeply cared for has finally seen the light and changed for the better. That capacity to hold on to hope and see the underlying good in human beings is actually one of the most beautiful, empathetic qualities about who you are. The problem is that the narcissist knows this about you and they are cynically counting on it. They are actively betting on the fact that you still have a tiny, hidden, vulnerable corner of your heart that desperately wants a happier, different ending to this painful story. But here is the final, unshakable truth that will set your soul completely free. You do not need them to change in order for you to be completely okay. You do not need their validation or their apology to prove that your past experience was real. And you absolutely do not need them to admit they were wrong in order for your personal healing to be authentic. Their transformation, whether it is 100% fake or a temporary performance, is entirely irrelevant to the incredible future you are creating right now. Your future is already unfolding in the quiet, steady breath you just took. It is happening in the conscious decision to keep focusing on your own peace instead of texting them back. They are panicking right now because they can feel that the game is officially up and you are standing directly at the exit door. Do not let them turn your best, most loving human qualities into a cage to trap you all over again. See the performance for exactly what it is, listen for the click, and walk out into your freedom.